On this episode of China Unscripted, the CCP is making a big mistake on Hong Kong. People with money are trying to get out, and it could further crush China's economy. Welcome to China Unscripted. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Zhang.
And I'm Matt Ganesha.
And joining us once again is Edward Chin, longtime friend of the show and former hedge fund manager and activist. He's also the author of the new book, The Path to True Freedom, a hedge fund manager's memoir on the dismantling of Hong Kong. Ed, it's great to have you back on the show.
It's good to see you, Chris, Matt, and Shelley.
Yeah. Fortunately, it always seems like there's bad news when we have you on. So in March, they passed Article 23 in Hong Kong, and that's got a lot of people really terrified. Can you tell us why there's so much fear around Article 23? Considering there's already the national security law.
Yeah, this is the local version of the NSL. And, like most business people, they don't like the fact that if you get arrested, you don't get access to a lawyer for the first 48 hours, and then you could get detained for like 16 days, right? And then pretty much with the enactment of the NSL back in 2020, the totalitarian regime can do whatever they want. But now they just make it into like the Hong Kong version of the NSL, which is more strict. And then interaction with, for instance, like foreigners is becoming more dangerous, and you could get locked up in prison for like 10 years if you criticize the government. So it's more stiff, it's more harsh, and then it's more than surreal to see that Hong Kong has turned into pretty much a police state. If you think of a 2020 NSL is bad, this is much, much worse. So I guess it's bad for business, but of course the security chief, Chris Tang, and also Li Ka-chiu, which is the chief executive of Hong Kong, they say, after the political part is done, they will focus on businesses. But there are no more businesses, honestly, the way they make this extreme makeover of Hong Kong. So I'm pretty pessimistic about the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what's amazing about this. It's not just Hong Kong democracy activists who are scared, but businesses, foreign businessmen in Hong Kong, because this is very threatening to them.
I don't know, like it seems like, I don't know whether it's from Beijing or just that Li Ka-chiu, John Lee, and Chris Tang, these are like a hardcore police people, right? They're policemen. And then they don't know anything about businesses. They don't know anything about IT, logistics. They know how to suppress people, and then they learn a lot, I guess, from Xia Baolong, which is their boss, about fear. Now, Xia Baolong tear down all the crosses in Wenzhou, right? As we all know. And then they are also being sanctioned by the former U.S. government, the Trump administration, for destroying Hong Kong's autonomy. So if you put all of these guys together with the former CE, Harry Lam, and all that, these are very, very bad people who are trying to administer Hong Kong. How can you do that? So I guess Hong Kong right now is like 1950s, like in Shanghai, when the entrepreneurs, the industrialists, they leave Shanghai for a better future, so they come to Hong Kong, right, at that time. This is pretty much, there is some similarity to it, because also people fear about the assets that they have could be confiscated easily, because of all the new laws. And then if you talk about the finance space, if you are in a regulated environment, let's say you have to be regulated as a fund manager in Hong Kong, I see the risk of having arbitrarily being arrested for saying the wrong thing. They could frame you into it. So the other option is look into places where there is a common law is practiced. So definitely Singapore. If I take a look at high tech, and there isn't too many high tech firms in Hong Kong, definitely the shipments to Taiwan.
Well,
Yes.
I want to ask this. The Chinese economy is doing pretty bad right now. How much of what's happening in Hong Kong do you think is just good old communists stealing people's wealth?
Now, China is not doing well real estate wise. It's bad, but Hong Kong, you see all these so-called. We don't have any more technocrats. First of all, if you talk about those who are civil servants trained properly, but those top down, these are all loyalists. And then the civil service, the civil servants who left in 2019, a lot of them they are part of the diaspora community. Hong Kong actually it's famous for being an international financial center then, and now what is left? The infrastructure wise, I don't think it's doing well, and also the local retail, right? And then I met the three of you, I guess, back 4 years ago, 2019, right, when we were still in Hong Kong. But now, if you take a look at the streets of Hong Kong, it's just that quiet, and there's a lot of bankruptcy being filed by SMEs. So if you talk about the vibrancy, it's not quite there.
So what are SMEs?
Small, medium enterprises.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about things like restaurants, bookstores, that kind of shop is being shut down.
Not enough people because, first of all, the people in Hong Kong, they don't want to stay in Hong Kong for the weekend. They go to Shenzhen, right? Because it's already being suppressed. And every day when you turn on the TV, the radio, or especially, like TVB, for instance, which is more like a propaganda machine now. Everything you see, it's pro government, right? And then they talk about you have to be, like almost like a loyalist. So these things, I guess the normal everyday person, they for a long weekend just cross the border, which is kind of blurry right now. But then at least you got some service and it's cheaper. They don't want to think about Hong Kong. And every place you go to, there is a police car almost, right? And you talk, and remember, since you guys also did an episode on Article 23 recently, what is really kind of bothering me, it's if you go for a confession session at a Catholic church, it could be tapped right now, right? Because the father has to report about the confessor if it is potentially against state secret, for instance, right? Or they try to topple the government, right? So the father has to make this call, so-called the judgment call. Just to make sense, I mean, the Catholic fathers is accountable. It's like a lynch between the confessor and God, right? Why should I report to the policeman? So this is just beyond ridiculous the way I look at this Article 23 thing.
Oh, it's interesting that you talk about this kind of security apparatus being used even through like civil society, through religion. Because I remember during the protests in 2019, Hong Kong's Christian community was a big part of that, especially early on. Like there were a lot of people there, the protesters would be like singing hymns or doing like prayer groups and things like that. So the idea that, and Hong Kong has a very strong Catholic tradition. So the
We talked to
idea,
Cardinal Zen.
yeah, like Cardinal Zen, we talked to him about the protests when we were there. So the idea that now there is no escape from the authoritarian state, right? Like even through your spiritual religious beliefs, they're going to try to control you is horrifying.
Yeah, and then you could be jailed for not reporting others, right? That's the thing. So it's like Big Brother is watching you, and like in the Cultural Revolution, you have to report to someone whether the other person is doing something bad or bad mouthing the government, right? It's so different from 2019 when we were filming in Hong Kong, right? At least there's a freedom. But now people are just want to keep silent.
Well, so when the party first tried to pass Article 23 in Hong Kong in 2003, there was a 500,000 people protests, and it was so big that they had to shut it down. They couldn't pass Article 23. How did it get pushed through seemingly so easy now?
Well, in 2020, by that time, a lot of people are being locked up. Remember, 2020, Jimmy Lai, the publisher of Apple Daily, was first arrested in August 2020. And then he was on bail for like 7 days in December. He had his Christmas. And after that, he cannot get out. And after that, in 2021, the first 3 weeks of 2021, all the pandemic people were arrested. Now, to answer your question, they just silence all the opposition voices, right? And then they passed the national security law on June 30th, 2020. And after that, they got, well, 3.5 years just to do all the dirty job, right? And make this national security issue, turn it into like a local law. Actually, it's more easy for them to implement. And then some people think, why they push it so quickly. It's these are like cater for the pandemic people. The alliance group, like a Han Tong Chow, Li Chebian, and also the Apple Daily's group, which is a Jimmy Lai and those who were arrested, the Apple Daily executives. So it's like tailor made for those people who are, in the eyes of Hong Kong totalitarian regime and also to Beijing. These are the ones they try to punish. I'm afraid, honestly, that some of them cannot survive this long jail sentence because this is a harsh, very harsh thing. It's at par with what mainland China could offer for jail sentence if it is against the government, so to speak.
Well, I know Hong Kong has put out, big bounties on a lot of the Hong Kong protesters who have fled internationally. I'm wondering, are you concerned about your own safety considering, you were a hedge fund manager, you've been very critical of what's been going on?
Honestly, I myself and also one person who is in finance, he was formerly a member of the Political Consultative Conference, meaning pro China. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree 100% of what the CCP says. We always talk about, I don't want to name his name here because your program is being watched by so many. Now, he and I, we talk about the original 1.0 version of the one country, two systems. Even though he is so-called pro-Beijing, at the surface, he is pro-Beijing. But we always condemn if you don't bring back the 1.0 model, which is the Deng Xiaoping model, talks about you could still have horse racing, you could still dance, and then everyone is jolly and all that, right? You are putting a nail in the coffin for Hong Kong. We say that, but we all know that the one country, two systems, it's just by name only. So it's similar, I think, to what the Tibetans were facing back in 1959, some 65 years ago, right after the CCP, they invaded Tibet, kicked the holiness, the Dalai Lama out, and then doing this ethnic genocide. But we have internet right now; they cannot just kill you. But culturally, we will not be using our traditional Chinese characters, and then they want you to speak Mandarin. And right now we're going through a blood transfusion because a lot of people leave, and then a lot of people through these different talent schemes they are already in Hong Kong. Now, before the show, I was just talking to someone who went to an older bookstore who bought one of my books. And then he got my WhatsApp. For some reason, he WhatsApped me he works for a U.S. technology company in Hong Kong, and I just found out that actually he was from mainland China, and then got this talent scheme and came here, worked at the stock exchange before, now work in U.S. technology company. So lots of people are coming in through this channel. So in 20 years' time, that's supposed to be the end of the so-called one country, two systems. Hong Kong people, the DNA of it, the so-called, those who had this colonial ties with the British and all that, is gone. And then those who still try to commemorate what happened in Tiananmen, those people will be like in their 80s, like Li Chap-yen. So unless the regime collapse, I think Hong Kong people will be pretty much like robots. And I'm not saying people in China, in mainland, they don't fight, but because of the scare tactics, a lot of them just focus on making money. They don't think about democracy. They don't think too much about justice. They don't think too much about freedom.
Well, it seems like it's the promise of Deng Xiaoping and his reform and opening up is that you can make money as long as you don't criticize the political system. But in Hong Kong, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to make money.
Well, in China too. But.
Yeah, in China. Oh, well, yes. But, in terms of, you brought up earlier at the, investors. And, for example, you're a hedge fund manager, and one of the things hedge funds do is you go long on some positions and short on others. But if you want to short sell a Chinese company on one of the Chinese stock markets, could there be potentially consequences just for that apolitical investment?
I think most people they see the risk of running businesses in Hong Kong now as a regulated entity, because not just the trading strategy part, but also the personal risk, and also the company specific risk. It's intertwined with the policies, and also with the new laws, right? So what's wrong with a hedge fund manager or a long only traditional fund manager to set up shop if they are entrepreneurial? Let's assume they are not working for like a Franklin Templeton, but someone just with a seed capital of 50 million to start up, or a sizable $500 million hedge fund. It's much safer to be stationed in Singapore, where there is a rule of law. If you run into dispute, at least you could argue it in court. Right now, if they say, hey, you could be in violation of the national security law or basic law under Article 23, they frame you into that angle, then you are fried. You will not have a fair jury, because there's no jury, right? So it's just the three NSL judges will determine your fate. That's the scary part, right? So who wants that? Take a look at Jimmy Lai, as I mentioned. The whole Apple Daily, which I consider it as a big business, right? And it's also a listed company, got dismantled in less than 12 months, right? So who wants to be having their company listed in Hong Kong? And also, if you talk about the fear factor, it's not just someone who is vocal, who supports the free speech. I think the big real estate tycoons, they are worried too, because a lot of them, they are having foreign passports, right? I believe Li Ka-shing, it's a Canadian. Richard Lee, definitely, it's a Canadian. That's a Li Ka-shing's uh, younger son, right? And I don't know about Victor, but some of the other ones. I was told during the very important meetings in Beijing, these Hong Kong real estate tycoons are encouraged not to leave Hong Kong. And there are also rumors. I don't know whether you cover it in China Uncensored, that some of them, you have not seen them leaving Hong Kong even after COVID. I mean, COVID's over for 2 years now. So why is that? I think it's some sort of I don't know, house arrest. I think time will tell. Whether we're not here to spread rumors, but it's kind of interesting to note that some of the people um, they are not in jail. I'm not talking about the real estate tycoons now. Some of the politicians, well-known, vocal, pro-democracy ones, you have not seen them leaving Hong Kong since COVID. I mean, I don't want to name any names here, but then again, I pray for them every day because I'm afraid of their safety. Uh, that maybe they have a deal with the Hong Kong government. If they shut up, they won't get arrested. If they don't leave, just stay in Hong Kong, but they won't arrest them. They won't put them in jail. So this is how things are like in Hong Kong, and then we just have to assess it from a distance.
So it sounds like the Hong Kong government is putting in place exit bans the way that mainland China has.
I think so. Even for people who are rich, powerful, or before political. I think so.
Wow.
I mean, they must be concerned about the capital flight risk, right? I mean, there was already that before the NSL and these different crackdowns, but now are people trying to get their money out of Hong Kong more than they were before?
If Shelley, if you talk about capital flight, one thing I don't like, since there's a saying, money talks, right? I don't want to say the second part because it's foul language. Money talks. You talk about the regulator, the chairman of a regulatory body. They are a member of the political consultative conference. Doesn't make sense. You mean you're talking about a regulator, right? They are supposed to be impartial, apolitical. You put someone who is, like part of the Beijing system, so to speak, right? So make sure that they worship the Chinese Communist Party, right? That comes first before businesses. So to me, it's beyond ridiculous to see a regulator, the top of the chairman. Again, I won't name the name of the regulator. There are only a few, right? In finance, you see them, like it's like they have to adore the CCP religiously before they talk about, high impact governance. This is what business people want, and then good compliance, these check and balances. But then they talk about the criteria for people at the top. It's an allegiance of the CCP, and it's something that we don't see like in the old days.
Are there new regulations that have come out recently that affect the financial industry that are clearly political and not actually good for the financial industry?
Well, I guess, first of all, we have 10 different regulated activities in Hong Kong. Activity number 1 is called broking, which is your trading activity. Type 9 is asset management. If you want to be a fund manager, you need that license. A lot of people that I talk to right now for type 1 broking, there's no trading volume in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong stocks, it has gone from 32,000 Hang Seng level to the current level, like 18, 19,000. And then the real estate prices, they have tanked. A lot of people are selling their firms because there's a lot of reporting you need to do if you have a regulated entity. I have not talked to anyone who won in the last few months after, before they only announced the Article 23 to be enacted very quickly, right? Because the consultation period is just 1 month. I have not talked to anyone in the industry who want to set up a new shop in Hong Kong, to be honest, in the last, let's say, 8 weeks or so, because it's it's not really the place to be anymore. Why? I mean, compared to Singapore, I hope, even if Taiwan can reform their securities, the regulation to make it more friendly, more capital friendly for people to do businesses. Maybe Taiwan is also could be a good place to, but now Singapore is way much better. And then we talk about the top three world financial centers. It's New York, London, and Singapore. It's not Hong Kong anymore. And Hong Kong, it's dropped to, I don't know, 90 or close to 100 in terms of press freedom.
Yeah, I think what's happening in Hong Kong shows just how badly the West, and particularly the United States, miscalculated the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. The idea was like, okay, let's do business with China because obviously they will make reforms
In order to do business?
in order to do business because money is the goal. Everyone wants money. But the way the Chinese Communist Party has sacrificed Hong Kong shows that for the party, control is far more important than business and money.
Yes. And then there is also a fear factor inside of Hong Kong. Um, back a few years ago before NSL was enacted, people still speak freely. Of course, there were demonstrations in 2019. The funny thing is that just not long ago, right now we are um, at the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, right? Remember in January, the Hong Kong government talked about a public consultation for Article 23. This is done by the Hong Kong government. They say 98.6% of the people in Hong Kong, they support Article 23, right? It's like back 4 years ago when they talk about who wants the NSL to be enacted. They say almost 3-4 million on the streets. They sign up and say, "Hey, it's good for the country and for Hong Kong." I don't know how they get these figures, but then obviously you see a lot of these data cannot be trusted, and then people on the street they don't want to talk about anything anymore, anything that relates to politics. So what is left for Hong Kong? Can Hong Kong go back to normalcy? Normalcy meaning pre 2019 days, right? It's difficult, but some analysts, whether they're political or just people who are in trading in hedge funds or traditional funds, they see there could be one trigger point that might salvage Hong Kong, which is if the CCP acts in a very illogical way of attacking Taiwan. The presidential inauguration for Taiwan is coming on May 20th, right? If the CCP is doing something really stupid, right, then the whole world can find an excuse really to defend Taiwan. Then the Hong Kong situation could be reversed. I mean, now if you argue in the Hong Kong court about what Jimmy Lai has done or what Joshua Wong has done right now, there's almost a zero chance that they could have a even reduced sentence. And oh, by the way, for reducing the sentence, when someone it's a threat to national security, they will have their full term sentence. Usually before Article 23 it's enacted, even with NSL, after you service 2/3 of your sentence, if you behave well, you could get out of jail quicker. Now you can. The authorities could say that you are still a threat, and then you could still be a threat, so you have to receive the full sentence. And even when you get out, you are under high surveillance if you still stay in Hong Kong. And whether you can leave Hong Kong, that's another question. So that applies to everyone. The Article 23 plus NSL, this is like a nuclear bomb to Hong Kongers.
Do you think that you mentioned earlier that John Lee, the chief executive, had said, "Oh, we'll take care of the political situation first, and then we'll take care of the businesses." Like after everything is stable, quote unquote, according to the Hong Kong government and the CCP, then they'll look into reviving the business sector. Do you think that there are businesses who are holding out for that, or do you think everybody pretty much doesn't believe that that's going to happen?
Johnny has a big issue to do what he is doing, like a Terminator of sorts, right? He has to have a strong sense of self denial first. I mean, things that he said, there's a lot of cruelty in it, and then those. I mean, people in in businesses sometimes, they appear to be like pro Beijing because they just want to do businesses, right? Just for the money. But deep down, I think people with a Western education, especially under the colonial influence by the British, I still believe that after 150 years, people still respect a genuine rule of law and press freedom, right? But Hong Kong, right now, even the tycoons, they see their own personal assets is under threat. So companies, they will set their jurisdiction outside of Hong Kong, and then uh, conglomerates, they do diversify. It's not just like just doing real estate, building more flats in Hong Kong because they see the risk to put all the eggs in one basket. And to be honest, John Lee and also Chris Tang, who is the chief of security, even in my own program, in my own writing, I say these guys should have um, mental check by a psychiatrist every 90 days, see whether the guy is still sane. I think these guys are just abnormal. And I mean, if you have someone who is insane to run a so-called international city, then everyone is at risk, right? I mean, it's a very very realistic. I mean, these guys just have a lot of hatred and also a lot of greed too, because they are paid in cash right now. They cannot use the banking system. So remind me of like Scarface, Al Pacino. They're trying to see how much money they get every month.
So, do you think those sanctions the U.S. put on Hong Kong are having a good effect?
Initially, I think they got scared, but this is not a Magnitsky type of sanction. That means it doesn't affect the wife and the kids, right? So it's just affecting them. There are many ways for them to get around doing things. If it's a Magnitsky type of a sanction, yes. But now I think John Lee, Chris Tang, Carrie Lam, they take it as a badge of honor, right? So they say, yeah, I got this is better than the Bohemian metal, right? Because they got sanctioned.
Huh, interesting. I have a question about capital flight. And I remember when we were in Hong Kong in 2019, you were giving a talk to a bunch of business people about the wisdom of moving a portion of their assets to bank accounts in foreign countries, that is not Hong Kong or China. Obviously, you predicted even better than you had hoped to predict the situation. But are we seeing the danger of restrictions on the movement of capital out of Hong Kong?
Like the China style
Right.
of a sanction.
Like their $50,000 a year cap on how much money you can move out of mainland China. But now we're talking about Hong Kong dollars. Can you still trade Hong Kong dollars freely, move them out of the country, or out of the country. Or is that being restricted, or is it going to be restricted?
I think if China is going to war with Taiwan, Hong Kong will be affected, and then this currency control could happen. I cannot read Xi Jinping's mind, but it seems like with the weak China economy, and then Hong Kong is not doing well, and then thanks to Johnny's administration, because definitely I don't see the two systems anymore. So if John Lee, just follow the party line, um, just like being a puppet, right? The risk is there. The risk is there, like 50,000 US max per year. So back even in 2019, that was before NSL met. We talk about the threat of getting someone tried in China inside a Chinese court, right? So that scares already a lot of Hong Kong people. So back 5 years ago, a lot of people would open offshore accounts. In my writing and also in my own channel, which is at Chin World, together with some of the so-called mild pro-Beijing business people, this is what they do too. They will only retain 5 to 7% of their net worth inside of the Hong Kong banking system. Let's assume they are already having dual citizenship, a Canadian and also the residence, the right to live in Hong Kong, meaning a Hong Kong permanent ID card, right? Forget about the Canadian tax, which they have to pay. It's much safer to move almost all of your assets to a country where you have to pay tax on your dividend income, right? Or on your capital gains if they buy U.S. or Canadian stocks, right? So you have to pay your tax, but then if they go back to Hong Kong, let's say 3 months in a year, they just rent a place, and let's assume someone has a 100 million Hong Kong, which is like 12 million US. So it's like a very successful SME person, small medium enterprise entrepreneur. He is in his mid 60s. He will have 5 to 7% of that, meaning 5 million to 7 million Hong Kong inside the Hong Kong system. Well, of course, you can buy a flat right now with that amount of cash in Hong Kong. But also, if the guy is in his 60s, he can just rent, right? You just pay your 10,000 Hong Kong to 12,000 rent until he die, and then it's a main family still in, let's say, Vancouver. Much safer that way. And even those businesses that are not surviving, I know someone is in the restaurant business. That person already moved to another country. They still got staff, and then the business is just not doing well. There's only less than 10,000 US sitting inside their business account in Hong Kong equivalent. So if they have to do the monthly payroll, they just wire the money to Hong Kong and pay. This is how they play safe.
So, assuming there is no black swan events, China doesn't try to invade Taiwan, where do you think Hong Kong will be politically and economically in 10 years?
There will be Hong Kong will be just like another Chinese city, first of all, because this uh, technology guy that I talked about, who just bought my book from a used bookstore. He is from mainland, right? So there'll be a lot of these guys who are replacing the old Hong Kong people who were born in Hong Kong, or someone like Jimmy Lai, who left China when they were young, and then see Hong Kong as a land of opportunity. But then those with who are free thinking, they will be more fluent in English, and they will just get immersed into different countries. They will be hopefully more active in politics too, in the Five Eyes country, Canada, US, UK, New Zealand, Australia. Hong Kong will not be like the same Hong Kong like in 2019, meaning it's not dynamic anymore. And then you will still have the South China Morning Post, which currently is still owned by Jack Ma. And then um, will be just a place to do business, but it's not competitive as like before. And then it will not be in the top three. It will not reclaim its status as the top three in terms of being an international financial center. Because think about it, Hong Kong, well, the government says they will install more than 2,000 surveillance equipment. I don't know where they will install these things, but then there will be facial recognition. Um, like it will be like Xinjiang and Tibet, very high technology. When you enter, even if they check your eyebrow, even right, if you have a mask on, they could have a high chance to recognize who you are. So so it's not a place that I want to do businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me when you're talking about the people coming in from mainland China to kind of replace the Hong Kongers. It basically is you were making that analogy about Tibet. That's what's happened to Tibet, right, in the last few decades. When you were there, Matt, you
Oh,
saw that,
when I
right?
was in Tibet, this is 2002, when foreigners could still go there. I would say about the Lhasa had been essentially divided, where one half of the city was the old Tibetan city, and then another half had been built up, and it was basically looked like a crummy third-tier mainland Chinese city. But it was just all mainlanders speaking Mandarin, and they had, the Chinese grocery stores and the Chinese, karaoke bars and that sort of thing. And it was just like, wow, I couldn't believe the amount of non-Tibetans there. And economically, they seem to be doing better. So it's like the money also got essentially sucked out of the Tibetan people into the mainlanders.
Yeah, so I mean, I wondered, Ed, what do you think about the youth of Hong Kong and what's going to happen? Because I know when we were there for the protests in 2019 and 2014, so many of the protesters were young, they're teenagers, early 20s. And there was a sense, even among the older people, that, they're kind of fighting to like protect the youth of Hong Kong, like the future of Hong Kong. This is what got people upset when the police started tear gassing, like students. So in mainland China, we see a lot of apathy now on the behalf of young people, right? The lying flat, that kind of thing. Do you think this is also what's going to happen in Hong Kong? What do you think is going to happen to the young people?
Well, this lying flat mentality, it's kind of spreading to Hong Kong now. Young Hong Kongers, they don't want to invest in the Hong Kong stock market. They do speculate in the US market, though. By the way, they don't want to put their life savings in a Hong Kong property because they don't see the future. And then people uh, in Mandarin they say "tang ping," right? So it's like lying flat. Um, and then they simply they don't like to save for a rainy day. Um, yeah, they might want to go have a short trips to Taiwan, Japan, because it's too much for them to think about the long term. Chris asked me just now, what do you think of Hong Kong 10 years from now? Honestly, if there's if if a Hong Kong government and also Beijing do one simple thing, that could change the, I guess, perception of a lot of people. Meaning, if they free Jimmy Lai and the other political prisoners right now, right, through the chief executive could have the power to give amnesty. Of course, he won't do it, but let's assume that happens. It's not just me saying it, but also I think the chief rep of the U.S. Consulate General, Gregory May, right? He said if Jimmy Lai and the other political prisoners could be set free, you don't have to try to organize so many financial forums in Hong Kong. people will slowly come back, right? And I do believe it. Perception is reality. And why are they not doing it? I mean, even honestly, if they want to show some sincerity, John Lee, instead of just, and also Chris Tang, just create this online bashing team. They have an online team just like mainland now. Whoever writes something, let's say from the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or Washington Post, write something critiquing about Hong Kong, they will immediately respond, right? And then just to fight back, by writing verbally. But that makes the Hong Kong look very bad because it seems like uh, political uh, issues and also fighting back in a political sense is what they care about, and it's something that they only know, nothing else. So that scares a lot of foreign investors.
Well, so it doesn't sound like they're going to release all these political prisoners. Is there anything you think that would need to happen to prevent this horrible fate for Hong Kong? What would need to happen?
I I think, as I alluded to earlier, it's Hong Kong will just become another Chinese city, and then yeah, they will still use English, and then um, they will still uh, practice common law with Chinese characteristics. Let me say it again: common law of Chinese characteristics. So it's becoming more and more like China. So what's the point after all? Like if you oh, maybe you didn't catch this news. There's some so-called prince from the Middle East was trying to set up a family office in Hong Kong. It was lured by some of the pro-Beijing guys, right, in businesses. And then they announced that they will set up this family office with half a billion US, right, as their like seed capital. And then this so-called prince, I think, whether it's from uh, was it from Dubai or Saudi Arabia? Better check. But it's big news in Hong Kong. This so-called prince announced that because of businesses in the Middle East, we have to back down from this capital injection. It's like a very laughable. It's the Hong Kong government, and then even I think the former CE, not Carrie Lam, CY Leung, right? Even praise about, hey, we are attracting Middle East capital into Hong Kong because they want to do it. Paul Chan, the financial secretary, even went to the Middle East trying to lure businesses from Dubai area, right? Saudi. And then this guy suddenly, it's a 28-year-old prince. Actually, it's not even like a close relative of the king, so to speak. So suddenly backed out, and it becomes the most laughable thing around Easter time um, in Hong Kong. And
Wow, it's like even Saudis are like, "Oh no, Hong Kong is too authoritarian for me. Let me go back to Saudi Arabia."
Oh, it's too authoritarian for their money, I think is what they're saying.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But better check whether it's Dubai or the Saudi, but definitely not Oman. That I remember. Yeah, yeah.
Mm. So Ed, what's going on with the Hong Kong diaspora?
Well, very interesting because as for my um, my so-called mission right now, it's to organize this World Hong Kong Forum. Has been going on for 3 years now. This year, because of Article 23, they speeded up the enactment. We are doing a few different forums in different cities. First stop is in San Francisco on April 6th, Saturday. near UC Berkeley area inside a church. I see there are a few very strong communities in the U.S. Definitely San Fran, um, L.A., New York, a little bit of D.C. and Texas. In Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary. Now, of course, they organize these different demonstrations, just like a few days ago, they organized this uh, different rallies together with the UK and Taiwan and I think Japan as well against the enactment of Article 23. They just don't do the protest anymore. Honestly, these younger protesters they have been in the diaspora community situation for 3 years now. So they will get their education. Um, in Canada, we have this so-called lifeboat program. People will get new skills, so they will resettle into a new country. I think they will not forget about what Hong Kong has given them. Some of them, and most of them, they still have relatives, if not their own parents, still living in Hong Kong. So I guess they will acquire new skills, but at the same time, they will be outspoken. But at the same time, I think how we see Hong Kong is quite different from how Hong Kongers living in Hong Kong see themselves because of this fear factor.
Could you explain that last part?
The diaspora community, we always can still communicate through the internet. We have forums, we have gatherings, we have community centers every month, if not every week, right? Where there are gatherings, discussions on what's going on, um, concerns about those who are spending jail time in Hong Kong. Um, so we see the how the Hong Kong government is not really honoring the one country, two systems as executioner, right? They have to execute this two systems, but there's no more two systems. It's just something on paper. And Hong Kongers living inside of Hong Kong, they see themselves as someone who cannot speak freely, um, highly monitored by all these different surveillance equipment, and also they are so afraid that anything they say, could be a threat to state secret or anything that could put them into trouble. Because Article 23, remember, is very broad and also very, very vague. And then those even like talking to foreigners in Lan Kwai Fong, right, where my office was, which you went to, I think there are a lot of foreigners. So by talking to someone doesn't look Chinese, would I be more at risk as being framed as communication with the foreign power, right? Who knows? So there's a lot of fear factor living in Hong Kong. And let me just rephrase and also remind you one more thing. You could be jailed for not reporting others, right? So you would play the role of like in George Orwell's novel. Big Brother is watching you, but at the same time, you have to report someone who is doing something wrong. If you don't report, you are also in trouble. You could be jailed for a long sentence. I think 14 years, right?
This is how the CCP always does it. They get people to turn on each other. You can't trust anyone. It's communism 101.
Yeah. And your legal rights, honestly, there isn't much, right, with what's going on now. Your legal rights, detained for like um, 48 hours, no lawyer, and then they could still detain you for up to 16 days. And after that, if they think honestly you are a threat to the country, I don't think they will abide by this 16 days rule. They could do whatever they want. So this is my perception of the new NSF, which is the Article 23 under the Basic Law now. And thanks to John Lee and Chris Tang.
So we were in Hong Kong for the 2014 umbrella movement. And then when we went back like 2 years later, it seemed like everything was really subdued and no one really wanted to protest. But it was clearly under the surface somewhere, because then just a few years later in 2019, the protest movement exploded, and it was over something slightly different. But essentially, I felt like there was this anger at the CCP that had been under the surface for 5 years and then reemerged. It's now been almost 5 years since the last Hong Kong protest, and there's a lot of more restrictions, right, on protesting. You basically can't go protest. But are you seeing, or do you feel like there's under the surface Hong Kongers in Hong Kong feel this kind of anger and this desire to protest? They just don't feel safe doing it, or there's not like a trigger yet, or what do you think's going on there?
Inside Hong Kong, I think the flame will die. It's sad to say this because they use many different methods to silence you, subdue you, and to scare you. I can't remember who you interviewed, but for instance, like Denise Ho, the singer, right? They confiscate her passport. They haven't laid charges on her yet, but she cannot leave Hong Kong. We talked about Cardinal Zhang just now. He is like 92 now, right? Passport confiscated. I think he got a special permission to visit the Holy See once, right? But then that's about it. And then those you interview in 2014 and 2019, how many of them are in jail or cannot leave Hong Kong? All of them. So it speaks very clearly that even if you go back this year, there isn't too many people for you to interview.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think would happen if we went back this year to Hong Kong?
Well, if you decide to go back, and this is what I told my audience too, we come up with a plan, UK, US, Canada, Australia led, with politicians and with big business contracts to sign, and then we are just the reporters. So if they arrest everyone on the plane, right? This is like more like a business mission trip, and if John Lee do anything stupid, this will become international news, right? And then hopefully our countries will rescue us. This is the only way.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, but I feel like that's unlikely to happen, especially since it seems like not even the Saudis want to go to Hong Kong to do business now.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we're not going back.
No.
Not here, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the protests, you talk about the flame dying out, and you may be right, but I was surprised that sort of at the end of the zero COVID situation in mainland China, there were these big protests, the white paper protests across China. And it was almost like there had actually been that quiet flame burning, and it just sort of broke free through the surface, if that's what flames do. So do you think that's still possible in Hong Kong, or do you think it's so bad that even like a white paper type protest couldn't happen?
Oh, when you hold up a white paper, they will arrest you. Now, just I think in December last year, outside Times Square in Causeway Bay, they call him Captain America 1.0. His name is Andy Young. He was holding a white flower up, and then the police tried to stop him, and then he was pushed down on the floor, and then they sentenced him for 10 days. Thank God this time, at least it's not NSL, right, for obstructing justice. At least it's only 10 days. He already spent a few years in the fishbowl revolution in 2016. That's a very short time frame, remember? Fishbowl revolution in 16. That's not the umbrella. Umbrella is 2014. So at least he got a smaller fine, which is the 10 days in jail, right? Um, anything like the white paper thing, I find Hong Kong people, they are just those like a long hair Leung Kwok Hong. Of course, he's in jail now. And then there's LSD, League of Social Democrats. Most of them they don't go out and do demonstrations anymore. To be honest, there's no more opposition groups. The Civic Party now is dissolved. The Democratic Party basically uh, they just exist on paper, but they are not doing much. And then people always have doubt about the Democratic Party. Back 30 years ago, started by Martin Lee, it's a totally different thing. But now anything that's left so-called a pro-democracy party in Hong Kong, they just doesn't mean a thing right now. So sad to say. Mainland China, they don't have a party. Those who come out holding up a paper, they are an individual. They don't represent a group. If you are being perceived as a group, then you're in trouble. So Hong Kong is a delicate situation.
Well, Ed, every time we have you on, it seems like things keep getting worse and worse and worse for Hong Kong. Right now, it seems like I don't see how it could get worse. So I know there's a Chinese saying that when things reach the extreme, they reverse. So hopefully the next time we have you on, it'll be because somehow the CCP has collapsed and Hong Kong is free. And I hope it won't be because things are worse. I don't see how that's possible.
Well, I hope, politicians and business people can act together, like-minded people who support democracy, press freedom. Rather a plane, we all go back to Hong Kong, host something nice, and then and then do some sort of a town hall meeting with these guys, like if they are still in power, John Lee, Chris Tang, right? Debate fiercely but constructively. I hope one day that would come, but not now. I just keep praying.
Well, thank you for joining us. Once again, your new book is The Path to True Freedom, a hedge fund manager's memoir on the dismantling of Hong Kong. Yeah, hopefully it'll be good news next time.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, the situation in Hong Kong is really depressing. It's like freedom is dying.
Yeah, so Matt, I appreciate the fact that you were trying to find some kind of like
maybe it's simmering
silver
under the
lining.
surface,
and then it's just like, nope,
the
it's
flame
dying.
is dead.
You're just
It's
like
gone out. Darkness surrounds the world. It's like the end of Dark Souls.
Oh yeah, so what happens when darkness surrounds the world? There's nothing left but black humor, right? Which, like Ed was mentioning Singapore earlier, and how Singapore has become this new financial capital partially because of the CCP just totally gutting Hong Kong. And I'm barely on Twitter anymore, but I was on the other day, and somebody had tweeted this joke from China, which I appreciated because it felt kind of like the old Soviet jokes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
In Soviet Russia.
Or
Like
not those, but like just like back during the Cold War, there would be like the U.S. Embassy and things. They would kind of like have in their cables and stuff like retell the jokes that they had heard like people in the Soviet Union kind of telling about the government.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all like very kind of black humor-ish stuff about how terrible the Soviet Union was. But they were very subversive in the fact that even saying this kind of stuff could get you in trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a CCP Soviet joke, which Patrick Chovanec tweeted, but he said it's a true joke from China. Never doubt the ability of China's Communist Party. It took the U.S. 100 years to turn New York into a global financial center, but the party has turned Singapore into a global financial center in just 3 years.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah. So it's like you're praising the CCP, but you're actually...
Yes. I mean, what's ironic is Singapore is not exactly a free country, too. Like
It's not a free country.
It's
but
basically a dictatorship, but it's a less restrictive dictatorship. And I don't want to say benevolent exactly, but it's more like there are certain freedoms that you have and certain property rights and those sort of things, unlike with communist countries.
I mean, Hong Kong was similar in that there were definitely lines you couldn't cross.
You mean under British rule?
No. I mean, I'm talking about under one country, two systems.
Right.
But you could basically do business there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
now you can't even do that.
nope.
You can't even have a flame simmering quietly in the background.
I mean, all the restaurants are going out of business.
I mean, I do think that this is what happens to, like, the CCP crushes an ethnic group, a community, or whatever, and then people leave, and then they try to, like, hold on to that through the diaspora, right? Where they try to, advocate from outside the country, but it's also always very hard to do that.
Right.
Yeah, Hong Kong activists abroad are like the Tibetan community now.
Yeah, or
Right.
the Uyghurs. I mean, I think Ed kept saying that Hong Kong is just another Chinese city, but I think we were talking to a protester in Hong Kong in 2019 who basically predicted that it was going to be worse than a Chinese city. It was going to be
Because they have to crack down.
because it's going to be Xinjiang. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be the Uyghurs. It's going to be the Tibetans. It's going to be, the people.
It's not
who-
Shanghai.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let me add a potential silver lining here, which is that you now have an even bigger diaspora of people from China, but I'm including Hong Kong in this. And the reason that's important is if you look historically, like Sun Yat-sen, right, in his revolution that took down the Qing dynasty, like he was educated in the West, right? I believe he even went to school in Hawaii. And it was him and other Chinese diaspora, including the wealth that had been accumulated overseas, that then those overseas Chinese used to then bring down what at that point had become a corrupt dynasty. And so it is possible that as you have, Chinese and Hong Kong wealth moving out and more people moving out, that it increases the strength of that diaspora. And then one day that could be part of the force that helps the people in China overthrow their communist overlords.
Yeah, you're really trying to go with the optimism.
I'm really trying really hard.
I
Well-
was just thinking about whether I wanted to crush this or not.
Do you want to? You can, if you want to crush it, you can, because I have an actual solution,
Okay, so let me crush Matt's hopes and
Okay.
dreams first.
and then I'll
Which-
save it.
I don't think you're wrong, but I think that the CCP is very cognizant of this danger.
Here, I want to watch Matt. get
So
crushed.
essentially, what is happening, right, is the CCP is trying to control the Chinese diaspora. So, it's hard for me to
true.
talk and watch Matt, so I'm going to look over here as he
we got a monitor over here, so I'm watching. It's great.
yeah. So, the CCP will try to threaten Uyghurs or Tibetans or, Falun Gong or the Hong Kongers, like anybody who is motivated to work against the CCP from abroad, right? Like the whole, like, they belong to China thing, which Xi Jinping kind of reiterated recently, the idea that the Chinese diaspora should, essentially listen to the CCP.
Operation Skynet.
Yes, or like they can come get you wherever you are, right? Like the idea that like you still have to live in fear when you're abroad because they are. Well, there's that thing a few years ago when like Chinese college students in Australia, like somebody got in a conversation in their college class about Tibet, and then that was reported by one of the other students back to the police in China who visited their parents. So anything, like they will try to crush. And then the other thing that they will try to do is, which might be more damaging in a lot of ways, is to sow discord among these diaspora communities, right? We saw this happening with the Chinese democracy activist community that fled China after the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, that the CCP was able to essentially sow a lot of discord within the pro-democracy people outside China and like make it so that they became powerless to stand against the CCP. So those are two things to really watch for. Is there has to be an effort to try to protect these diaspora communities, and that has to happen not just within the communities themselves, but in the countries that those communities now live in. Right, like the U.S. government has to stand up against this kind of transnational oppression. The Canadian government, the UK government, they have to, Australia, like the places where these people are going, they can't let, a lot of these people are Canadian citizens or US permanent residents or UK permanent residents, and they cannot let these people be persecuted by a foreign adversary government on their own soil. And I have to say, the FBI has been doing better about publicizing these things and going after these threats.
I'm just thinking about the recent thing where the people at China Uncensored said they got a call about like there was going to be a mass shooting at their training compound. Someone's going to come throw a grenade.
Yes.
Yeah, in the past, their tires have been.
I
on
think
their buses,
even
tour
recently,
buses,
like in
slashed.
California, the tires got slashed again.
Yeah.
So
Which, like, if you go on a freeway or something with slashed tires, like the whole thing could explode.
and these are on humongous buses. So
Yeah,
yes.
with also like a lot of teenagers. Like these are not like professional dissidents. I mean, they're mostly Falun Gong, so that's like
Well, they're
why.
teenage dancers.
They're basically, yeah.
They're trying to murder a bunch of teenagers.
I think what you were
Right.
talking about, yeah, there was some guy making like bomb threats or something, right?
There was some email about a bomb threat, and we covered this on China Uncensored on Friday.
and the FBI is apparently looking into this, like, so they're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is not like the CCP is not going to take this quietly, right? Like they understand the risks that you're talking about, Matt, from
Right.
like diaspora communities. So they're
No,
gonna try
I
to
get it.
control.
You totally crushed any flame that was left inside of me. But in a way,
She's Chinese.
But in a way, you've provided inadvertently a little bit of optimism, which is that, if these, Five Eyes country governments can start cracking down on the transnational repression from the CCP, then there is more hope.
I mean, I think that
So there's hope.
I think that the
If.
U.S. is
If
I was going to say, I think the U.S. is actually doing not bad, and I'm not as worried about the U.K. But I think Canada, I am not holding my breath.
Oh yeah, Canada's done for. Australia is doing better. New Zealand's done
They were like
just
a
went
little up,
there.
and
Yeah.
now it's down.
for. Yeah.
Like Paul Keating's back talking about how they need to, like the enablers, not enablers, but engagers, but they really
They are
aren't enablers,
enablers.
are coming back in full force, trying to, smooth things over and get money back into China. Everything's great. Let's support the CCP.
Yep,
So you had some solution to this problem.
absolutely. So the CCP is cracking down hard in Hong Kong. We also know that China's economy is not doing very well. So if we engage with them and pump more foreign investment, more money into China, they will reform.
And then Hong Kong will be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. If we totally give a bunch more money to the CCP, they will definitely release Joshua Wong from prison.
Yes, we must do this.
Mm-hmm. It's really humanitarian aid if you think about it that way.
Well, I mean, we should also be, China's a developing country. We need to be giving them aid.
I like that you took this black humor idea and you just like ran with it.
I ran.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, no.
How are you doing, Matt?
I'm crushed again. I'm crushed. There is no optimism.
Mm-hmm. Lunch will be fun after this.
But hey, we can at least laugh about it. Right?
We sure can, because we're in New York and not Hong Kong.
Thank you for watching China Unscripted. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Jung.
And I'm Matt Ganesta.
We'll talk to you next time.